Hey guys, Omni here. I know we're late to this one. I was out of town over the weekend, still catching up on some stuff, but we are going to be checking out New Rockstars breakdown for Loki episode 5, the penultimate episode as we come into the finale just in a few days. I'm excited, man. Last episode was pretty wild, so I'm sure there's plenty of stuff we missed throughout because we were bouncing all over the place. There's a couple things that I knew in the moment too, or wasn't wholly certain of, that I didn't comment on as well. Like the Alcatraz scene. Like I was like, is this supposed to be? I didn't hear the name they ever called him. I didn't hear his name out loud. And I was like, he's supposed to be the guys that tried to get away, but they never found. Yes, in fact, he was. It was fun little stuff like that, man. Like from Loki being DB Cooper to this, good stuff. So guys, let's go ahead and jump into this, see what New Rockstars has found. If you're not subscribed to their channels, go check them out. They have some great stuff over there, great videos, merch, all kinds of stuff. And I'll have a link to their channel down in the description. But let's go ahead and hop into the video. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Loki Season 2, Episode 5, Science Fiction. This season's penultimate episode that lets go of the science and embraces the narrative fiction of giving your hero a purpose, to be a pen and a mug. From real-world Alcatraz mysteries to the possibility that Loki could have actually invented the TVA, and B-15 confirmed as Verity Willis, let's break down all the Easter eggs.
Is that a name I should know?
Detail in this episode. By the way, it means so much
again,
to me
guys,
that you watch
Marvel's
my
weak bit in fandom stuff.
I am recording this late after watching the episode.
I was always a DC kid growing up, aside from Spider-Man and the X-Men.
Until an asset covers me.
That's it. That's all I had before the MCU came about.
Anyway, thank you for watching. Oh, by the way, I am wearing our OB-inspired shirt. We're all gonna die! I think it's my favorite shirt that we've ever released, and really, it's the best way to support us by grabbing one of these. You can get it at nerdriot.shop, and if you're in the LA area, we are doing a live show on Thursday, November 16th at Brain Dead Studios. Come hang out with me,
if I could,
with others from the New Rockstars
but it's the other side of the continent.
For thinking that Mobius was McDonald's Jack, or theorizing that the TVA has got some Soylent Green operation going on. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Come hang out with us. Okay, we open the episode with the Marvel Studios fanfare with these odd sounds playing over it.
Yeah, it's very discordant.
Now, last week, composer Natalie Holt tweeted that for episode 4, she used whispers and vocal chants from the Old Norse poetic Edda Lokasenna. The Lokasenna features Loki, the mythological Loki, accusing the gods of moralistic sexual impropriety, sorcery, and bias, which he believes will lead to the onset of Ragnarok. But at the start of this episode, it's Loki who finds himself on the other side of an apocalyptic event, left behind,
nice,
alone at the TVA, as if on the other side of a rapture. Episode 4 ended with Loki getting flooded in light from the wall of the temporal radiation, rushing toward the loom observation deck. But episode 5 opens in the same moment with Loki's eyes opening and Tom Hiddleston's blue eyes looking way greener than usual. While the temporal loom looks pretty messy on the
as
left
they
side
would,
here, it is
bathed in yellow like that.
Chaotic as it was at the end of episode
Color
4.
theory, Eric.
Then the right side of the loom was completely unraveled, but here the right side looks pretty tightly braided to the immediate right of the ring, at least for a bit until it starts to unravel further down on the right side. So we're not at the exact moment of the meltdown, we are before it. But where is everyone? Well, they call this TVA code 1229 fail-safe mode. So when the loom fails and temporal radiation swamps the TVA, I think what this means is the TVA automatically reverts all employees back to their branch timelines and freezes this facility in a moment just before the meltdown gets really bad, as it undergoes a rebooting process, which would require...
I was wondering about that, because when we saw the failsafe flashing up, like, unless there was some other protocol in place, simply removing your TVA employees back to their original timelines isn't really a failsafe in that sense. And the worlds are still dying, things are still unraveling. So what exactly, my question was, what exactly did it save them from? What did this failsafe do? The TVA still dissipated, you know, even if its employees were saved and put back on the timeline, the functionary, because a failsafe is made to shut down a system before it critically fails beyond repair, right? It's supposed to prevent damage. So it was unable to do that. We saw it deteriorate and disappear. We saw it unravel. So at some point it unravels. So removing just simply the employees would not qualify technically as a failsafe unless there's something else going on behind the scenes of that. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't catch the detail with the loom being more threaded than it was the last time we looked in. So did he involuntarily slip before the rest of them arrived there? Because that would explain us not seeing what happened to them. Well, obviously the blinding light could be a good old explanation for that. But Sylvie, who wasn't hit by the blast and left, that would explain that a little bit more clearly. But lots of little details about that.
Require everything to spaghettify. I think this is just part of the TVA's programming. Why does the TVA need to do this? It's kind of like the blue screen of death, your fail-safe mode on your computer. You know it's done so at that point.
So he's saying that the failsafe is the unraveling of it from reality? I don't know if I could jump on board for that. I don't know that the TVA is a cure for spaghettification, otherwise we wouldn't have so many warnings. I don't know. I don't know about that one.
This is also that the TVA can get rebooted and start over. The variants are reverted to their branch timelines, and yes, we see that each of those four are on branched timelines, allowed to exist temporarily like external hard drives waiting to be plugged back into a future iteration of the TVA. But why?
But also, like Loki said and was pitching to them at any point, you know, they can just be reinserted from whenever they were taken as long as their branch still exists and was never pruned. They have somewhere to go back to, and they can be put back like just as they were taken so that they are never actually missed from their timeline. So that's how that plays out in my head, you know. So it's maybe not like, I wouldn't think of it as like a backup hard drive. It's just like they're plucked up, and literally whenever they're done with them or anything goes on pause, they can be slotted back in. And no one on that branch would even know they were ever gone. And especially if they could like mind wipe them and erase all of their memories of having been gone, that creates even more of a stronger contingency for what happens when the TVA goes dark.
Was Loki left behind here in this rapture? I believe Loki, as a variant to Sylvie, represents a kind of glitch in the Matrix that is linked with Sylvie's possession of He Remains Master Tempad. Loki's time slipping, I believe, is connected to her having that object. As OB later says,
it's like you're a better version of one of those Tempads.
A better version of one of those Tempads is what He Remains had. The
Interesting.
end credits of every episode
Maybe
is on that thing. And I think that's why when Sylvie shoved Loki out of the Citadel in season 1, episode 6, Loki inadvertently time slipped to an earlier era of the TVA when we started in season 2, episode 1. And a big clue from the writers later in this episode points to that device being the key to everything. We get a few match cuts of Loki walking through the TVA, kind of lost, and he's always center frame on the cut, almost like a time slip that happens without the slipping part of it. It's just on the cut. And even though Loki's headed in the opposite direction from the automat, we next cut to him walking through the automat doors to find an empty automat, and all of the cases that used to be lit up with slices of key lime pie are now all empty and dark. I kind of feel like we're watching Danny on the big wheel going through the Overlook Hotel. He just kind of cuts from the kitchen level to
I was trying to quantify that feeling, and it very much is. That is what it. Yeah, that's it. Nice pull. Nice. You helped me out there. I was like, what? Why does this feel so eerie? Maybe it's the what are those called? The back rooms. What are those called? Liminal spaces or something like that. It had a little bit of a vibe, like kind of that same empty, desolate, forever ongoing feeling. I don't know.
Being in the hallway with the Grady twins. It's all very creepy. Loki hears this announcement.
TVA code 1229. Fail-safe mode initiated.
The weird thing here is that it has this theremin music playing underneath it, recalling the similar music playing under the Miss Minutes welcome video. Like, why would they announce it at all if the whole point is for people not to be in the TVA? Who is this for? I think it really is just part of the programming, and the TVA just kind of runs on these weird, pointless courtesies. So Loki time slips into a chronomonitor bay and sees another version of himself flipping through the TVA handbook, and then time slips again, and we realize he's just back a few minutes because he returns to the bay to find himself now reading the handbook, and the version of himself that he just is now behind him. So we are seeing a little bootstrap paradox tie itself into a knot here, and I love it. Upon hearing his past self call out hello before disappearing, our Loki still looks around confused and is like, hello? It just kind of shows how sad and lonely this Loki is. He just wants someone to be in the room with him. But it doesn't last long because the whole chronomonitor bay spaghettifies. And actually listen closely to the sound. Yeah, maybe the reason The Shining was in my head is that we hear these weird screams mixed into the sounds that sounds like the unnerving shrieks that we hear over the opening titles of The Shining.
Yeah, it is very similar.
What is spaghettifying are these control panels. The strands take on a variety of colors to match the wiring inside of those panels. Then the TV monitor spaghettifies, cracking the screen as it switches to a depiction of Miss Minute saying, "Thank you for your service," before it switches off. Again, a pointless courtesy. Who is this for? Now, the opening Loki title does something different this week. While the letters flicker through different typefaces, the L disappears, and then the K disappears, and then the I, and then leaves the O by itself. And then all 4 letters appear again, but it mirrors how Loki gets left behind by his friends, but then reunites with them by the end of this episode. But on to my favorite reveal this week, that Casey originated as Frank Morris, Alcatraz AZ-1441, who famously escaped from Alcatraz prison, the island in San Francisco Bay, in June 1962.
I wish I said something, man. I wasn't confident in myself at that point.
In their beds, the 3 climbed down ventilation ducts that they carved into their cell walls, and then went through an unused utility quarter, and then were able to get off the island with an inflatable raft, and they were never
seen again.
They're believed to have drowned, but there's been a lot of public speculation that they
lots
got away.
of theories.
So like the DB Cooper incident in season 1, I love that Loki season 2 brought up a real life mystery and justified it as an extracted variant. And maybe I'm just obsessed with this because I live in San Francisco. I see Alcatraz every day. And just 6 weeks ago, I visited Alcatraz prison, and I went on the audio tour where they walk you through how Frank Norris and
I've never been there. I've never been to California, but like I remember not too long ago watching Watchers ghost hunt at Alcatraz, and like it's eerie. I would love to go though.
And how the Anglins broke out. Frank Morris had actually previously escaped from the Louisiana State Penitentiary and had an IQ of 133. So that could explain why Casey is so into the TVA guidebook. Frank Morris ended up in Alcatraz for theft. And it's just worth noting that Casey had been keeping a drawer full of treasures in the TVA, though he considered most of those treasures junk and paperweights. Attention to detail on this prison break is so great. The paper mache head in the beds, the tiny cell.
That's what that was. I was like, man, it must be real cold in here. I thought they had like ice or frost on their bodies. That's what I thought that was initially. Whoops.
The hole that they carved into the wall's ventilation shaft, the boat horn that you hear from outside, and the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. And his conspirators, Clarence Anglin and John Anglin, are actually cameos by Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, who directed this episode and other episodes of Loki season 2. They and Eric Martin and Casal Farhani are mostly to thank for this season of content being so good. So Casey/Frank tells them,
"Let's go! Hurry up! If they catch us, they're gonna cut us like fish."
It's a callback to season 1, episode 1, when Loki threatened Casey.
"Give me the Tesseract or I'll gut you like a fish, Casey." "What's a fish?"
Which at the time seemed like a reference to the movie Scream, when the killer told another character named Casey,
"You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?"
But we see that Loki has
I forgot they shared a name, man.
He's the boat guy.
Because that's immediately the scene that always makes me think of.
Referring to the 4th conspirator of the June 1962 Alcatraz escape, a guy named Alan West, who had failed to escape and remained on the island. Or it could be that the way these 3 escaped is that they could have synced up with an actual boat from the mainland who would have picked them up from their raft and taken them to Angel Island, which is where they were intending to go. So from here, Loki slips to the McDonald's parking lot in Broxton, Oklahoma, 1982, and then the parking lot of a Piranha Power Sports where Mobius works, and we later find out that's the year 2022, where we'll come back to later. But it might be just a coincidence, but it is worth noting that 4 of these characters have origin years ending in 2. Casey's in 1962, Sylvie's in 1982, B-15's in 2012, and Mobius is in 2022.
Oh,
Obi
wow.
kind of spoils it by being in 1994.
Damn it, Obi!
Briefly time slips to Time Theater 2-5. It's a large 2, small 5. This episode is season 2, episode 5, so there's that. But more importantly, this is the Time Theater where Mobius first interrogated Loki in season 1. It's where Mobius showed Loki the film film reel of his life on the sacred timeline, where Loki was sobered by seeing the deaths of Frigga and Odin and himself. It's a hugely important location for Loki on his journey. It's where Mobius gave him a second chance to have a new glorious purpose, as Loki says later.
You saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself.
And we know from trailer footage that some emotional gut punch scene is gonna take place here in the finale episode. So next we see B-15's origin as a Dr. Willis, pediatrician in New York in 2012. And in the closing credits, in her file, we see a photocopy of her ID confirming her full name as Verity Willis, pediatrician. And just to verify that this isn't a random thing, we also see on that ID the name of her father, Roger Willis. This is a huge confirmation. Verity Willis comes from the Agent of Asgard run of the Loki comics in 2014. Verity Willis is part of a family that includes her father, Roger Willis, that was tasked with guarding the Casket of Ancient Winters and the Anvaranot, which is a magical ring that allows the wearer to see through any lie. But when Verity was a baby, she eats this ring, it dissolves in her stomach, it gives her powers, and later as an adult, she meets Loki while speed dating, and Verity is really the only character who can put Loki in his place. So this is perfect for B-15. It would make sense why she's such a damn good hunter, and why that she knows this girl with the cast is probably going to keep climbing trees. Do I think the character that Wunmi Mosaku played in the Sacred Timeline dissolved an Asgardian ring in her tummy? No, probably not, but I think it is the spirit of the character that they're trying to say is what B-15 is. Now, again, we're in New York City in 2012, in the MCU. Don't you think it's inevitable that we will hear explosions or Chitaris yelling at each
we don't
other
know what
online
month it
that's
is,
flying overhead?
what
This
day.
would be prime season for Battle in New York. Every other time we go to New York in 2012, we're gonna hear some boom booms at some point. But we didn't see or hear the battle here, but we are in a branch timeline. It could be a branch where the battle never happened. I think it is though, and we're gonna end up back in that battle, and Verity Willis is gonna do something awesome to help people during it. And it's just pretty funny that B-15 / Verity Willis would have been impacted by a citywide crisis caused by Loki, and that
That's a good
after
point.
She got pruned, she was the arresting officer of Loki variant L1130 immediately after he escaped from the Avengers after that battle, and she got to smack him across the face. Dr. Willis says,
Do you remember how bad it hurt when you came in? That's good too.
yeah, she tells the girl that pain can actually be a good thing because it teaches you how to avoid danger in the future. It's something B-15
Dude, I had to go into that so much in The Fall of the House of Usher, because there's a theme of deflecting, ignoring, suppressing, or numbing pain throughout. So it's something got to talk about quite a lot over there. And yes, that is one of the key factors that I hammered into.
15 applies to Loki when she arrests him, slowing down that smack so that Loki feels the pain every nanosecond of it. But remember later in season 1, when Sylvie meets with B-15 in the rain outside the Rockstars store and shows B-15 her memories, B-15 cries. And now we know it's because she's a doctor, and she's probably thinking about all the kids she wasn't around to care for. B-15 / Dr. Willis writes on the girl's cast, "Don't climb trees," and then she just realizes that's not going to stop you, is it? The image of climbing trees also showed up in TVA propaganda posters as a metaphor for pruning branches of the sacred timeline. So we cut to Mobius, aka Dawn, finally on a personal watercraft, but just kinda. He's not riding a jet ski, it is a Sea-Doo, recalling his line to X5 that not all personal watercraft are jet skis. Now it is interesting how Mobius remembers jet skis as a TVA agent, but Casey didn't remember what a fish was despite paddling out across the San Francisco Bay. So Mobius is in Cleveland, Ohio, 2022, branch timeline, 2022.
They meant more to
would
him.
be 4 years into the blip, if the blip is part of this branch.
Well, Casey's also not a field agent, so like Mobius goes out and sees these branches and stuff, investigates things. Casey's just kind of a clerk. You know, things just come across his desk, right? You know, he does all the little tediums back at the office. Mobius is like the detective that goes out and gets to see the world, so he's probably way more aware of a lot of different things that actually happen on the branches, where everything is just at a distance to Casey.
But you know what? It sounds like a great time for people to escape their stressful life riding around on a Sea-Doo on one of the many lakes, rivers, and ponds in the state of Ohio. I don't know why people think that you have to live by an ocean to have a jet ski. Anywhere where there's like a retention pond of water runoff from the rain, you can have a jet ski. There's places in Nevada where you can have a jet ski. Jet ski is an American dream, my friends. Now this dirt bike enthusiast,
Yeah, I live on the
who just
river.
won a free donut,
All
is played
kinds
by
of jet
Isaac
skis.
Bauman, who's credited as the cinematographer for Loki season 2 episodes 1, 3, 4, and this this one? 5. Between this cameo and Benson and Moorhead playing the Alcatraz guys, it seems like they gave these speaking roles to crew close to production, maybe to avoid actors being cast in these roles and listing them on their IMDb's, which could spoil it ahead of the season. That does often happen. Loki time slips directly in front of the balloon guy, matching his goofy arm waving. You can find...
They slowed it down too. That was the only time that it happened with one of his time slips, where they slowed it down to purposefully sync his arms with the tube.
Old set video of when they shot this with Tom Hiddleston, and it's pretty funny. Loverboys working for the weekend plays on the radio, and we learned that Don is a single dad with 2 sons. A single dad during the blip? Maybe his wife dusted in the snap, or maybe she fell off the back of the Sea-Doo and he never turned around because he was having too much fun. But remember,
I will admit that I completely forgot the blipping excuse could be the possibility for why she wasn't there. But it also doesn't necessarily mean that anybody who was absent from a relationship was also blipped. You know, he could simply have had a divorce in the wake of all these things. Maybe they had a disappeared son. Maybe she lost her family in the blip and just couldn't take the stress, and maybe it waned on their marriage. Just because she's not there and it happened during that time frame doesn't automatically make her a blip victim or somebody who was blipped. Just putting that out there. But she very well could have been.
Mobius got really defensive in episode 2 when Brad brought up the possibility that there were people Mobius left behind on the sacred timeline. And even though he probably didn't remember his kids, maybe deep down he had a fatherly instinct,
a feeling,
kind of
an instinct,
haunting him. So we got to a bookstore in Pasadena
an
in
echo.
1984 where a book titled The Zartan Contingent is on the shelf, and it's written by A.D. Doug, PhD, KQB Self-Publishing. We have seen the Zartan Contingent in the closing credits of every episode. Its name could be a reference to G.I. Joe, where Zartan is a villain and mercenary who serves as a leader of the Dreadnoks and works for Cobra Commander. He's a shapeshifter capable of changing his skin to blend in, but also in Marvel, there is an ancient alien race of shapeshifters called the Zartans with an X. Other books visible on the shelf: Atlas of Forgotten Places by Travis Elborough, Explore the Places That Time Forgot, The Age of Spectacle by Tom Dykhoff, The Ghost Rider by Philip Roth, a story about a young woman with a vague past who the main character comes to believe is Anne Frank, Smiley's People by John le Carre, that's a spy novel, that's the 3rd in the series. The first was Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, The Last Library by Freya Sampson, Disclosure by Michael Crichton, Debt of Honor by Tom Clancy, The Big Red Train Ride by Eric Newby. So OB's original
There's
name
a couple of
was
Stephen
A.D. Doug,
stuff with Stephen King and another Tom Clancy one in there.
Douglas Adams, the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who cursed every reference to the number 42 in media thereafter. So we learned
Still
that
haven't
OB,
seen it
or
or read
A.D.
it.
Doug, has been trying to buy his books with cash from bookstores, so that later when the bookstores would try to figure out where the book came from to be able to pay the royalties to the publisher, they'd think, oh, maybe we have to order more of this book from this A.D. Doug guy, and then A.D. Doug would finally make some money from all this. It's kind of clever, but yeah, it doesn't work. Sneaky sneak. Now behind the checkout counter you can see some more books. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray, Overload by Arthur Haley, that's concerning the electricity production industry in California and the activities of the employees and others involved with Golden State Power and Light, which is a fictional California public service company. Insomnia by Stephen Kang, where the character can perceive auras and other hidden things. Disclosure by Michael Crichton, and the wind-up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. So AD goes back to his warehouse in the hills outside Pasadena. Since he's a teacher at Caltech, this structure would probably be part of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which were various facilities around the Pasadena area used to experiment on rocket engines for NASA. Like on one of the shelves are models for NASA space shuttles. This structure was probably part of JPL's jet engine testing. But this is the same exact room structure of the RNA department.
Tubes and all.
It is the same curved shelves, the same overhead pneumatic tubes snaking
same
down
fans,
into a coil like the loom's throughput
no windows.
So what is going on? Did AD build the TVA up around this warehouse structure? Or when he got taken into the TVA, did he build his department to look like his old workstation? I think AD Doug was an imaginative sci-fi writer and science professor who was inspired by his own book that was given to him by Loki, and he built the TVA as we know it, starting with this lab. The computers in the TVA all
could
have
be very
early
likely
90s black backgrounds around because that's a tech 80 had in 1994. So in effect, Loki was the kind of godfather of the TVA. Obi's the one who built it, and then the Kang variant, He Who Remains, took it over. That's where my theory brain is at this week. We see this close-up of a post-it note board.
Oh God.
My God.
Yeah.
So we've seen this in the credits of every episode, except there is one new blue post-it that's been added right to the middle that is not there in the credits. It's only in this scene, and this blue note reads right in the middle, who, what, where, when, why, and the who is circled. It's already giving us
the answer of the
Loki later
episode.
realized at the end of this episode.
It's not about where, when, or why. It's about who.
Now, Brandon Barrick was a huge help in identifying these post-it notes. He made a helpful grid with all 112 visible post-it
Jesus.
notes. A lot of them are repeated on other notes, but I honestly think these might have been story beats used by head writer Eric Martin while they were writing this season of Loki, and it was repurposed as a prop with names and other details swapped out. So here's what it says. We can see Brothers Duel, it has the upper hand, L returns, then Crossing the Threshold, then The Thorn of Consequences, then Introduction of Amulet, story forks at this point. So the amulet could be their code word for He Remains Master Tempad. That could be the nexus point that the finale loops back to in the Citadel. Next post-it note, flashbacks from book 1, Dead Lake at the heart of something. Then Hex moment, and this is underlined in red, around PM, a feline creeping up in the shadows, whispers rustling, a build-up, and then an arrow pointing to crescendo, and that's underlined. Next, of the silent mountain, dash and T move forward. One says wrong, unsettled. Next, continuity of ancestral pilgrimage, dark mountains, celestial alignment, fated prophecy. H has an epiphany, tests, bridge of worlds, the broken heron, which could be a nod to Kate Herron, who directed the season 1 episodes. A curse passed down through generations, apprehensive, double underlined, Darsh leaves in the dead of night, monster, godlike soul, lineage, ancestors trace back through generations, expansiveness, deceit, double underline, bridge of worlds, the broken heron again, allies and enemies, death at amulet's curse, the cracking of water, ice, he knows. A re-echoed sound, multiple reflections of the same sound, cracks appear in fabric of grotesque, unhinged,
an episode of
decoy
X-Files.
for the hijack. Could the hijack be the hijacking of that flight?
As I wear my
Cooper?
X-Files
H
shirt.
finds out about her parents' captivity. The ground falls from under her feet. A falls. Parallel. Secret of the Dark Mountains. Yoren's betrayal.
Good
Capture,
God,
kidnapped.
man.
Parents what? Circumstances what?
I appreciate
The
this, but
Golden
I'm
Scepter.
ready to
The
move
Third
on.
Moon. T discovery changes everything, which could be a reference to Lamentus. Approach the innermost cave. Fear darkness kept in dark, and something crossed out. A falls behind, loses T in the fog. Forest Nation, and something crossed out. The broken tree. Her innocence keeps her naive, safe, unbeknownst to her. His feet silent, creeping on the soft moss-covered floor. The who, what, where, when, why, and who is circled. Flaxian calendar, lunar. Mortality and
Buy
grandeur.
white flowers.
Expansiveness and amplitude.
Written on there
Victory in the
twice,
wings.
too.
The truth, what does the monster represent? Hex moment. Zartan, hidden forts of Zartan. T-story, parallel with Zartan in book 2. The ordeal, arc of the, her is something sensitive, something he feels, something more than pool of deception, vapor traps in lungs, initiates dream state parallax, arrangements having nearly the same energy, dreams as something feels wrong, unsettled, urine, unhinged, fear darkness kept in the dark, the reward, parallatic ellipse, apparent ellipse as seen against the background of Secret of the Dark Mountain, the road back, of Zartan at the end of quest, a quest journey, obstacles hope, sacrifice, something must be given up, Belladonna, space in valley, the boy betrayed, the tower keeper, navigation, directional, internal, something of viewpoints, switches, flips, perception, seventh world of the Serpentine system, book of the something, resonance, reflection, reverberation, the mist follows, pull of deception, B feels like he's sinking, time is slipping, friend is facing away, A was in space in and valley, apparitions, Darish falling, quiet, pensive, softly spoken, dawn at the end, resonance, pool of deception, ancestry, key point. I'm sure this will
We
all
did
make
it!
sense after the finale. So 80 tells Loki,
Of course I believe you. It's a dream come true. One of my characters has come to life and needs my help. This reminds me of what happens in The Sons of Yoren.
yes, so Yoren was a name mentioned on this board. Sons of Yoren is apparently just another fictional book that he wrote, and maybe a lot of these plot points are just made up bullshit for whatever this story is. But for a second, we suspect that everything in the TVA might be taking place in 80 Doug / Obi's imagination. Like he's kind of like a Tommy Westphal figure from the St. Elsewhere finale. Or this could be like the 2006 film Stranger Than Fiction, starring Will
No.
Ferrell as a guy who
I like
realizes
that
he's
movie.
a character in a novel being written by Emma Thompson's author character. Really, I just think that 80 Doug has written countless stories about this kind of subject matter so that when Loki finds him, he is exactly the kind of thinker who would turn the TVA into a reality. Now, in the mess of 80's books by the typewriter is the book on black holes that we've seen in the closing credits. Obi says that since time traveling in a place like the TVA, which isn't supposed to have time, is still possible to Loki, then traveling back to a place that doesn't exist anymore is equally possible.
Doesn't sound like science.
No, but it does sound like fiction.
Science/fiction
Yep.
is the title of the episode, but the punctuation doesn't merge the two words together like
Yeah,
the literary genre
it's
of
one or the
science
other.
fiction, but it puts a slash in between.
That's where I saw some people getting confused. I saw someone, science fiction wouldn't ever say something like this, go into the unabstract, the things that don't connect. I was like, yeah, they do all the time. And this is not that case. It is one or the other. It is not the hyphenation.
Between them, making it an either or an or, a choice between looking at things from a scientific perspective or from a fictional perspective. Obi says,
With science, it's all what and how. But with fiction, it's why.
so Loki's why, at least at this point in the episode, is to preserve the TVA to prevent
Because it doesn't matter if it makes sense a lot of times. I mean, obviously you need setup, you need things in the story to kind of build to a point. You need foundational blocks. But with fiction, a lot of it is why. What is the message? What is the intent? What is the purpose? What is the goal? Why is our character going through this journey? What do they get in the end? You know, the emotional journey, the why of it all, and at times the who of it all is way more important than making sure everything is grounded in some kind of reality. Because that's not the point.
what's coming, he says. But that's not his real selfish why. He can't yet admit that it's not about the why, it's about the who for him. It's about his loneliness. He needs to time slip for someone in order to move. When they approach the chalkboard,
Anyone else feel like that was, I didn't say anything about it, but that was like the weirdest looking time slip? It was like the comping was so much sharper. Like it didn't have like a fade. It didn't have an occlusion. It just, it looked like a little bit better, but if I was doing a keying myself, like it just looked real sharp against the background compared to other times we've seen him slip.
on the
Might be
shelf to
because
the
it was
right
the
is a
brightest day
1922
we've seen
New
it
York
happen.
Giants baseball hat. It's the same one worn by Kiwi Quan.
Oh, that's so cool.
A short round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It's such a sweet Easter egg and something that you can celebrate with another shirt on nerdright.shop, our Indie I Love You design. The prod that 80 zaps Loki with looks like another piece of technology that could have inspired Victor Timely's design for the time stick. 80 Doug deduces that to reunite all the people Loki cares about, he would need the knowledge to build a temp pad, but Loki luckily has that TVA handbook in his coat pocket. So like Renslayer giving Victor Timely the book, Loki gives 80 Doug / OB the book and sets into motion the origin of the original pre-Kang TVA. Loki time slips outside the home of Dawn /
look at it.
Mobius. Dawn has twin sons, Kevin and Sean, played by twins Caleb Johnston Miller and Blake Johnston Miller. There's a rope made of tied bed sheets hanging from one of the upstairs windows. I'm assuming it's Kevin's, and that Kevin had snuck out. Dawn notices an action figure that is burnt, and I'm pretty sure that is a TVA Minuteman or a figure meant to look like one. It seems like Dawn's
That's what I
sons are a
thought,
bit of a
too.
Goofus and Gallus situation. Goofus being Kevin.
Who gave you the matches?
Stole them.
Kevin is is total Sid from Toy Story energy. I'm gonna assume he's actually named after Kevin Feige or Kevin the Robot, because both of them are kind of toy masters who love to play with their toys and then destroy their toys. But I think we can also see these boys as the sons of Odin, two rambunctious boys. You got a longer-haired Thor who just
See, I got that vibe.
more responsible son who loves snakes, and Loki loves snakes.
I've heard some other people echo that sentiment as well.
The snake?
Mobius tries to sell Loki a watercraft again, and Loki recalls
Puppy, Fenrir, Skull, Hati.
A beautiful union of form and function.
this is how Mobius described jet skis in season 1, episode 2.
There was a beautiful union of form and function, which we call the jet ski.
If we are learning that Loki truly did inspire the TVA, now I'm wondering if this phrase right now was first put into Mobius's head from this conversation. And surprisingly fast, Obi appears through a glitchy time door with a large prototype temp pad. Actually, you can see that he wrote on this device, temporal access device. He says that it took him 18 months, well, actually 19 months.
I had to take a break and move out when I lost my job and my wife left me.
Oh no! This speaks to what it takes to be a Kang level inventor. You have to sacrifice all your personal relationships. Loki tells Dawn to come with him.
Your boys won't even know you're gone.
Yeah, but I will.
All of existence is in grave danger.
I don't care.
Loki's pretty much learning the lesson he needs to learn this episode. It is about the who. Without our loved ones, we are lost. So Loki reconnects with B-15 / Dr. Verity Willis, and then with Casey / Frank Morris, who looks like he's just washed up to Angel Island in San Francisco Bay, judging from the angle of the Golden Gate Bridge behind them. That apparently was the destination of these escapees, according to investigators. But then back at the McDonald's in Broxton, Sylvie's takeout bag spaghettifies as the camera passes it, and you can see in the side view mirror of her truck that the process completes, and it is right in front of her face, but it doesn't really phase Sylvie. I think she knows little bits and pieces of her reality are fading like this, but she's okay with it because she's got the amulet, she's got the master temp pad, and I think she thinks she can continue staying a step ahead of this apocalyptic event. That's what she's been doing her entire life, after all.
I don't know. She seemed pretty attached to being here. Like, even like losing the clerk at the record store, you know. I don't know. I just feel like she was just really spaced out, man. Like, even though it was in her periphery, I've been at that tunnel vision, especially given what she literally had just went away from, you know? I don't know. It could go either way.
This could also explain why Sylvie, unlike the others, remembers Loki. I think her use of that device and her connection to Loki have made them sort of immune from the effects that affect the others. At this bar, there is a Zaniac arcade game. Zaniac craves blood! Yeah, this is actually the voice of Brad of Rafael Casal. Remember, his status as a big-time actor from the Zaniac film series in the 70s was on the sacred timeline. And if you stick around in this episode all the way to the end of the credits, you can hear his voice again.
Yup.
You died. Insert your coin, loser.
Which kind of feels like a meta nod to us. Like, we're dead after watching this episode. He's calling us losers. Loki and Sylvie debate whether restoring the TVA is ethical.
You would be ripping people from their lives, showing them something that they cannot unsee. What kind of choice is that?
And finally, Sylvie gets what Loki really wants out of this.
It made me think of like, you know, Doctor Who. It's the choice of going with the Doctor. You know, he's immortal by all extents, and you know, by the end of it all, you're not. So it's almost like, and at what point do you go back to your normal life, and how do you ever go back to your normal life after experiencing all of time and space like that? They deal with that quite a lot, existentially a little bit throughout that series, and it just made me think of that here. Like, once you open that door to something more than your current reality, it's hard to shut that door and close your mind off to all of the possibilities that you're missing out on.
Everything, all of it.
Is it really that hard? Come on, keep trying.
I want to save the TVA.
Why?
I want the TVA back.
And?
What do you want?
I want my friends back.
Yeah, it takes the bartender, whose name is Eric, and I wonder if he was named after head writer Eric Martin, because it would take the head storyteller here to break through to Loki to ask him what he wants finally, for Loki to give an honest answer. That answer is, he doesn't want to be alone. Loki asks that without his friends, where does he belong? And Sylvie responds,
We're all writing our own stories now.
it's the deeper theme of this episode, the power of story, controlling one's own narrative. Loki begins this episode poo-pooing the idea of being a writer.
Just
but
like
to
in
truly
She-Hulk.
run a TVA, you have to to be a playwright. You have to learn the elements of story and transition from the god of mischief into the god of stories. And the god of stories is what Loki becomes when he returns to Verity Willis and the Agent of Asgard run. Behind the scenes photos in the season 1 writers room show that Michael Waldron used Dan Harmon's story circle to structure each episode, and that follows the Joseph Campbell monomyth cycle with 8 story beats: you, need, go, search, find, take, return, change. This episode forced Loki to go back to steps 1 and 2 of that cycle: you and need. Who is Loki and what does he need? And this scene ends with what seems like a gag. Sylvie had ordered 2 shots of bourbon and drinks hers, but when she leaves and Loki reaches for his, it's gone. For a second he thinks, wait, did she just drink both of these? No. The reality is it's spaghettified away.
I didn't
and if you
catch
look
that.
At Sylvie's eyeline, she looks down. She saw it happen, but she doesn't care. This also recalls the last time these two got a drink on that train to Sharu in season 1, episode 3. The whole love is a dagger speech.
I guess she really
The object
doesn't.
disappeared out of their hands. In the record store Sylvie visits, there's a little monkey toy. Now this is a vintage Japanese toy that normally wears a little green sombrero and strums the guitar and taps his little orange shoes. So just another example of green and orange. Green and orange everywhere, even in this record store. As the camera passes this monkey, on the left is an Edith Piaf record. Edith Piaf, best known for the song Non je ne regrette rien, or No, I Regret Nothing, which is how Sylvie feels now. As much as I love the Velvet Underground, imagine this scene hearing Non je ne regrette rien. Maybe it'd be too Inception-y, I guess. Now the shopkeep's coffee mug reads "Take Me" and depicts
And
an
it does.
introduction. And from his orange coffee press, the mug, the couch pillows, Sylvie's green
A lot of
coat,
orange.
a lot of orange and green. He recommends the Velvet Underground's Loaded, and Sylvie plays the song "Oh Sweet Nothing," which we should note, it's not the first song on this album, it is the last song. And the guy's "Take Me" mug did disappear like an alien abducted it. It just spaghettified, along with the patron, his spilling coffee, and everything in the shop, and it looks awesome. Like the song talking
The
about having
effect's
nothing
so
at
good.
all, that is all that is left after this all spaghettifies. But Sylvie is not that worried. She just kind of swipes the tempad amulet, and this orange time door opens, and notice how the strands are repelled from that door. So this technology, which
Yeah.
the closing credits always
noticed
end
that
on,
too.
really seems to be the master technology that is going to be the key to everything in the finale. It is the amulet. Maybe it's even from ancient Egypt, and that's why she has those Ankh earrings. I think that Sylvie thought that wherever she was, as long as she had this tech, she could stave off any spaghettification effects. But she was wrong, and that spooks her into rejoining Loki. But it's too late. Like the ending of Avengers Infinity War, they all fade one by one with track.
I mean, yeah, her coming back around and returning to Loki and saying, like, you were right, everything's falling apart, would imply she didn't know then, coming back through this. You know, like that, it wasn't that bad. He was blowing it out of proportion, you know. It hadn't touched her. That's what makes me think she didn't know. And she does care about the lives on the timeline. So, like, they'd almost convinced me otherwise, and I forgot how this scene played out.
Magic final lines.
But I still didn't take it.
It was a fiction problem.
No, I have to go back to see my boys.
There's nowhere left to go.
And these final words
Yeah.
echo in Loki's head as he desperately tries to grab the strands to cling to the pieces of his friends. But then he hears some lines from even earlier from season 1, like this.
You know where to go if I can go
Yeah.
anywhere.
This is what Mobius said right before he got pruned in season 1, episode 4.
You know where to go if I could go anywhere.
And then Loki here also hears this.
Do you think that what makes a Loki is the fact that we're destined to lose?
Sylvie said this
Yeah.
to Loki on Lamentis in that same episode.
Do you think that what makes a Loki is the fact that we're destined to lose?
Into this line, Loki screams, his mouth going Kirby wide, and then he figures it out.
I did it. I controlled it.
And Loki explains to OB,
It's not about where, when, or why. It's about who.
he spins in the room to look at his friends, and he realizes he knows how to rewrite the story. And smooth as silk, he's back on the loom observation deck with OB the moment they watched Victor Timely
Yep.
head down to his death. So what happened here? Like Desmond,
And unlike before, he's inhabiting himself in that time. You know, where before when we were at the TVA, he was in a different time moment. Like he was able to jump into where he was, slot himself into his own position at that point. Whereas when we saw him slipping before, he was physically moving. and he remained elsewhere in the time. So, like, that allowed him to walk in on himself and then disappear and fulfill that loop. Here, and in that scene, he just went back to where he was. There's no doppelganger Loki. There's no other Loki floating around. He took himself back into himself at that point. It's a different level or evolution on top of his control of his ability as well.
In Lost Season 4, in the Constant episode, the one thing that grounds someone who is lost in time is their loved one. Their constant.
Yes.
For Desmond, it was Penny. For
Blah, 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 blah.
In Interstellar, it was his daughter
Thank you.
Murph. And for Loki,
Murph!
it's Sylvie and his friends. Why doesn't this include Victor Timely this episode? Well, I think Loki feels a unique kinship with variants who were violently extracted from their histories and forced to work for the TVA as variants.
It's true. That is, I was going to say this initially. I was like, well, wasn't Victor there? Wouldn't they have needed him for the correlation? But like, if to hone in, this is separate from what he's talking about here with the why are these people are important. Why he didn't try to seek out a He Who Remains variant or a Kang variant to take that place, is he only needed the people to track down and pinpoint the time they needed to go to. And realistically, you could be short one pin, and the amount of unique pins that were in that specific location at that specific time, you had more data than I think you needed at that point for all those characters. Were very rarely all together at the same time. Because Sylvie was there as well. OB was there. There's a lot of limitations when that comes down to it. So adding He Who Remains in the mix would have just been a little overkill, but I get it.
A kind of chaotic confusion you only feel with fellow grunts in the workplace. So Loki, let's go with the science. The science that Asgardians like Thor told Jane Foster is just another word for magic, and science and magic are two things that cannot be controlled, and Loki instead embraces something that can be controlled. Fiction as the god of stories. And every great story begins with the question, who am I? Now throughout the closing credits of this episode, notice how each name has one letter drifting away. The casting director screen shows B-15's confirmation as Verity Willis, Mobius on the Sea-Doo, Loki turning around to see himself, OB in his lab, and the mugshots of John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, the directors of this episode, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Now, if you enjoyed our approach to movie and TV analysis, we just released what I think is YouTube's most in-depth analysis of John Carpenter's The Thing over on the Deep Dive channel. Please subscribe and watch
check
that
that out.
And again,
I love that movie.
The best way to support us is by grabbing one of these OB We're All Gonna Die shirts at nerdriot.shop. See you at our live show on November 16th in Los Angeles.
Hey guys, if you're over there, check them out, see them live. If you're not, subscribe to the channel. If you're not, check out their stuff, their podcast. They got all kinds of fun little doodads to listen to when you got time to kill. But that was a great breakdown, man. They almost switched my perspective on a few things until the episode itself reminded me of certain events. I don't agree with the Sylvie thing. I think based on the last scene we have with her, it kind of solidifies that stance that I had regarding her. I don't think it's she's aware of everything that was going on, or in denial, or numb to it. I think she desperately would want to save that timeline, but once she saw that it was happening, what Loki had been warning her about the entire time was happening finally, that's when she chose to go back. She wasn't running away. She was like, okay, we got to stop this. That was the first time she took it seriously. So while there are these moments where you could just wonder if is she just really kind of putting it off, maybe one item here and there isn't enough to scare her. But when she saw that entire street and building and all that start eroding, maybe that's what got her to jump up and take action. Maybe she was aware that her lunch disappeared. Maybe she was aware that his shot glass disappeared. But once she was like, okay, it's just a little thing here and there. Maybe when it escalated is when she's like, oh shit, he's right. I don't know. It just like the final scene with her coming back to the gang is what tells me she cared. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Great little elements in this. Lovely little details throughout. That posted board, I did not expect to go that ham into it, but I should have. But my lord, that took up a huge chunk of this video, but I understand it. And again, I wholeheartedly commend the commitment to breaking this stuff down, dude. But guys, Were there any Easter eggs that you guys caught? Any theories that have not been posited yet that you want to share? Drop them all down below. I would love to hear from you guys. So let's carry on the conversation after the video. I hope you enjoyed the reaction. If you did, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you're not already. Remember, I do have a link to New Rockstar's original video down in the description below. So if you're not subscribed, or if you want to hear it and you haven't heard it without my obnoxious commentary over, go give it a look. Go give it a like. And before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sher, Ryan Karen, York Coruscant, Margaret Grace, Melito, Robert Anguiano, Jeffrey Hale, Jay Contrell, Eric Official, Amy Becca, and Casey Wood. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.